So for all y'all that like to criticize men for dating younger women, talking about, she's immature, that's a little girl. What y'all got in common with somebody that young? Their brain hasn't even developed yet. So y'all tell me, at what point in time does the Western modern Jezebel actually grow up?
The minute I saw him, I knew I was going to be with him. He just was it. I don't know how to describe it. And the second I heard his voice, I said, I'm going to marry this man.
What are you? An idiot sandwich. An idiot sandwich.
Keisha Chavis, Larsa Pippen, Vivica Not a Fox Anymore, Melyssa Ford, and many more all prove that the Western modern Jezebel gets dumber as they get older.
These ain't opinions. These are facts.
And I know I've been gone for a minute, but I've been sick with a respiratory infection and I lost my voice. But I'm back now. Happy New Year's, Kings. And don't forget to like the damn video.
Hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it, get it, get it, get it, get it.
This episode is called, I am 48, I am child free, and I've never been married. And guess what? That's okay.
Notice how she had to take that Jezebelian sip after making that statement. For all of you younger women, this is what cope looks like. Y'all gonna learn how women with the Jezebel mindset repeat they mama, give they best to the worst, and find something wrong with men that ain't got nothing wrong with them.
You gonna learn today.
I never made it down the aisle, but I have been engaged in the past. How many engagements? I would say 2.5. Let's start with the 0.5, since that was the first one. I was involved with a man who loved me. He was good looking, he was tall, he was charismatic, gregarious. Everybody loved him. My mom loved him, my sister loved him, my niece loved him, my friends loved him. Everybody loved him.
Notice how she didn't mention any man's approval. She didn't say that her daddy loved him, her brother loved him, maybe some uncles loved him. No, just a bunch of women. And that's not me nitpicking at her. Y'all gonna know exactly why I pointed that out by the end of this video.
But there was something inside of me that just said, this is not perfect. It's the furthest thing from perfect. He would say things like, nobody's ever going to love you the way that I love you.
Yeah, that's right.
And I believed him. I wrestled with this internal sense of guilt. I wrestled with the guilt of honestly wanting to be free, honestly wanting to live my life and to date and to experience other men.
When women say they just want to live their life, that's Jezebelian code for
She belongs to the streets.
that man told her that nobody will love her as much as he will. And at the end of the video, y'all let me know in the comments if he was speaking facts or not.
And to experience other things and other places. I just wanted to live my life. I had moved to New York from Toronto, a totally different country, with $25, 2 suitcases, and a one-way ticket. I didn't have permission from my country to leave. I didn't have permission from this country to be here. And I was making things happen for myself at a very, very rapid pace.
AKA she was booty clapping it up with rappers and athletes, and that's how we know her as Melyssa Ford, the ex-video vixen. But in Jezebelian code, it's just rapid growth.
And so to find myself inside of a relationship that felt so stifling at this very young age and not having the vocabulary to speak up for myself and articulate that somebody who loves you would not say those things to you. They wouldn't say that nobody will ever love you the way that I love you, because that indicates that there's a part of me that's broken or there's a part of me that's unlovable.
Nailed it.
But I didn't know how to articulate this. So I stayed in this relationship that I was wildly unhappy in for approximately 3.5 years, close to 4. And I have to admit, I was not faithful in this relationship.
And that should come as a surprise to no one because she was booty clapping it up with the rappers and athletes like I just said. Now, where in this video will she admit that this man did anything wrong other than saying what he said? Which is also Jezebel code for I need a reason to leave so I can take my ass back to the streets.
She belongs to the streets.
Nothing that I'm proud of, but I just chalk that up to I was really, really young and I was hood famous. You know, I was on the covers of magazines, on your local newsstand. So everybody recognized me. And that was another source of pressure that I felt being inside of this relationship rather than being free to explore all of my options. And so one day I was going through some drawers, you know, folding laundry, placing clothes, you know, in the drawers and such. And I found it. I found a box. And when I saw it, I said, please, God, don't let this be what I think it is. And I opened the box. And there it was. It was a ring.
Oh my God, no way!
And the only thing that I could think was that it was an engagement ring. It sure as hell was not a promise ring. We were way beyond that. We were not in high school. I was not wearing this boy's varsity jacket. This was an engagement ring. And if I knew this man the way that I knew him, that proposal was going to be very public. And that terrified me.
Ain't it funny when these women have a good man, they pray to God for an escape from that good man?
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
Of course it did, because a Jezebel will always come up with an excuse to avoid, break up with, or reject a proper man. I've said this to every woman I've come across, and we've had these type of conversations. I said that a proper man will only come into your life once, maybe twice. And if it's not some high school sweetheart, it's always at a time or phase in your life that's inconvenient for you. That's the test.
I didn't want to have to say no in front of our friends and family and publicly humiliate him. He did not deserve that, but I also could not see myself saying yes in front of everybody just to save face, and then later on have to break it to him like that this is not something that I was going to be able to go forward with. So what I did instead was I packed up all my belongings while he was out of town and put them in storage and flew back to Canada. And then I had the conversation about us breaking up over the phone. I know what you're probably thinking as well. Yo, Melyssa, that's fucked up.
Because it was, and she knows it.
Yep.
She needed a lame excuse to leave a dude that wouldn't approve of the Jezebelian lifestyle that she wanted to pursue. Boys! Only people with IQs barely above room temperature truly believe that Melyssa left that man based off of what he said. But keep listening. She's about to prove that she's more full of shit than a baby's diaper.
Yeah. I know. It took years for me to make peace with this decision. I have self-flagellated over this decision. I have beaten myself up every way to Sunday that you possibly can. I tried to reconcile with him at one point, which was a big mistake.
There's that Jezebelian sip again. Reconcile means that she tried to take her ass back and he Spartan kicked her into the pit of despair.
This is Sparta!
I had an ugly duckling phase. Don't tell anybody. I destroyed all the pictures, so there's no proof. Before I became a video model and a model, and I was like known as the brain amongst all my friends.
You
Liar!
You know, so I was studying forensic psychology with a minor in English literature in university. So the fact that I started to become known more for my looks than my brain is kind of ironic.
Stop the cap.
You not smart when you study something, you smart when you graduate what you study, and you ain't graduate.
You stupid.
So yes, you had more beauty than you had brains, and you was known more for your booty over your beauty. So what does that say about how much brains you've had?
You stupid. You stupid. You stupid.
Society places an enormous amount of pressure on us to check certain boxes. The box of go to school and excel. You've got to pursue a career based on what you went to school for. And you've got to excel and become successful. And you have to have your 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plan, all while you're in your 20s.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
That's not society, sweetheart. That's feminism telling you to do all that in your 20s. That was nothing more than a psyop to get women to trick off their 20s, develop a mistrust of men, and then become loyal, tax-paying slaves to these oligarchs. You could have done all that in your 40s because college doesn't have an age restriction. Your womb does.
Fact.
The problem with the boxes is that we never check in with ourselves. It is never, ever, ever our first thought as to, well, what is it that I actually want?
That's a damn lie.
I am now, welcoming into my circle a lot of women who checked all those boxes. And for all intents and purposes, a lot of the stuff really actually did not work out. Yes, they ended up with the children, but they ended up in sometimes a loveless, sometimes an abusive, and sometimes a marriage of convenience. Sometimes they didn't even get the marriage. They just got the kids, and they inherited a whole lot of struggle and strife.
That's because they were Jezebels in your circle and probably under your mentorship. Plus, you said sometimes, which means that some of them was actually successful. But a level 99 Jezebel like Melyssa won't mention the successful ones because she despises women that were able to do something she couldn't. Now go ahead and take your Jezebelian sip.
And it's not to say that their choices are better or worse than the choices that I made. These are just choices.
Stop the cap.
But for us women, I feel like our choices oftentimes have never really, really belonged to us. What? And when we have tried to exert our sense of independence, we are shamed for it.
That's because women need to be saved from themselves, because when you're left to your own devices for too damn long, you become a 48-year-old moron. And if you think I'm wrong, then keep watching to the end of this video and see if that don't change your mind.
Let me go on to the second engagement. So I'm 28 years old and I have left the previous relationship, the 0.5, and I have met this man who, the minute I saw him, I knew I was going to be with him. He just was it. I don't know how to describe it. And the second I heard his voice, I said, I'm going to marry this man.
Stupid!
Our choices oftentimes have never really, really belonged to us.
The fact that I started to become known more for my looks than my brain is kind of ironic.
I don't know what it was. Like, he had this Louisiana drawl. It's my favorite Southern accent. He was huge, like 6'1", 246 pounds of hulking muscle. He had skin the color of like red clay. He had this thick neck, big round head. He had this crooked tooth that drove me wild. His flaws were like manna from heaven for me. And I loved his dirty draws and I could just sleep in his armpit right after he'd played a game of like pickup basketball. That is how much I loved this man.
You didn't love that man, Melyssa. You lusted over that man just like I and many other men used to do to your booty pictures in those King magazines. This Jezebel is 48 and still don't understand the difference between love and lust, and y'all want men to believe that women get smarter as they get older?
Get the French toast out of here.
And our courtship was a whirlwind. He wined and dined me. He bought me lovely, lovely gifts. I'd wake up to those baby blue Tiffany boxes just laid on the pillow right next to me. We could go to my favorite store, and as long as I put on a little fashion show for him, everything I wanted I could get. But when I say that the gifts really mattered nothing to me, it was this man. He was the gift to me. That's just the fact. Fact. And we were 6 months into our relationship when the first sign of trouble appeared.
Oh, there's a big surprise. That's an incredible. I think I'm going to have a heart attack and die from that surprise.
I was in Denver for All-Star Weekend, and I was working for BET at the time. So I had a lot of responsibilities. I had to make a lot of appearances. I had to interview a lot of people, and a lot of those people were athletes. And he was back home. And I did not know that he was jealous.
Right, because a cheater with a history of booty clapping it up with rappers and athletes ain't supposed to make the next man insecure.
It didn't even cross my mind.
The fact that I started to become known more for my looks than my brain is kind of ironic.
You are an idiot.
And so when I got home after an event and I was perturbed by, an interaction with a strange man at a party that I had been at. He'd said something vile to me and it hurt my feelings. And all I wanted was to be comforted. And so I went back to my hotel room and I called my boyfriend and I just asked him to just tell me that he thought that I was beautiful and that he loved me. And he didn't do that. He just pressured me to tell him what happened. Why are you asking me to do this? And so I told him what happened, and he responded by saying, "Why would I want to date such a weak bitch?" It was this man. He was the gift to me. Such a weak bitch. That's just the fact. That would put the phone on me. I cried myself to sleep that night. And I had to act like the man of my dreams had not just told me to basically go F myself. And so while I was getting ready, a large bouquet of flowers was delivered. My makeup artist said, "Mel, you should read the card." And it said, "You are beautiful to me and I love you. And I'm sorry." And then his name. I burst into tears. It just flew out of my face. So basically my whole beat face just melted. And I called him and I said, "I received your flowers." And he said, "I am so sorry." And I told him, "I'm gonna forgive you because I love you."
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Let me get this straight. A man calling you a weak bitch gets forgiven, but a man saying no one will love you as much as I do gets cheated on and left.
You can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. Y'all heard it.
There's a community called the Black Pill that teach that a man's most important feature is the way that he looks. A lot of people think that's toxic, but this is why they say shit like that.
But you can't ever speak to me like that ever again. He's like, I promise I won't. So whenever people wonder, how do people end up in abusive relationships and why do you stay? The reasons are aplenty, but I will start by saying that that is not the way that it begins. It begins with love bombing. It begins with flowers, candy, gifts, and the wonderful sex, and the cuddles and the pillow talk. And this is how it begins.
Bullshit. Bullshit!
That's some old bullshit.
No, it begins with women living their best life and not knowing the difference between lust and love. It also begins with a Jezebelian queen that these women call mama, raising them in a dysfunctional broken home under an improper man or numerous stepfathers.
And it can last for a lengthy amount of time before that person really shows up. The true version of themselves shows up. And by that point, you start to bargain with yourself, and they start to apologize. And their apologies are usually very, very sincere, because at the end of the day, I truly believe that they believe their apologies are real. They just have an illness.
No, y'all have a problem because you left the man that gave you 4 years with no problems and then stayed with a man that after 6 months was ready to kick your black ass.
That's crazy.
The first signs of abuse are usually not physical. And by the time it gets to physicality, you start to reason that you were an active participant in it. You start to reason with yourself that you started the fight by angering him or saying something that was out of pocket. Or you reason with yourself that you are no shrinking violet. So it's not like you got hit and cowered in a corner. You fought back. These are the things that you reason and bargain with yourself that allow you to stay in this level of toxic relationship.
Baby girl, you was complicit with the effery the moment you started using your body to get what you want. It goes back to that whole beauty and brains conversation. When your best asset is your ass, don't be sad or mad when bad is all you attract.
And so, as much as I would love to say that that was the last time that he spoke to me in that way, and that was the last time that I received it, that would not be the truth.
I'm Captain Obvious.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
We were together for another 1.5 years, and I accepted his marriage proposal.
What? So a man can cheat on you, call you a weak bitch, kick your black ass. None of those women you mentioned before even liked him, but you accept the marriage proposal.
The fact that I started to become known more for my looks than my brain is kind of ironic.
And this is what, around her late 20s, early 30s, around the time where women are too grown to fall for that manipulation, you know, when they can't be so easily controlled. But a man with a woman in her early 20s is gonna manipulate her because she's so immature and doesn't know any better. But in Melyssa's case, the man that had her in her early 20s couldn't even manipulate her into a healthy marriage. But the man that had Melyssa when she was grown got to manipulate her into a side chick, a punching bag, a trauma bond partner, an object to release frustration on, and a damn fiance. Kings, if you a middle-aged man and you want a young woman, go on and do your thing. I'd rather have a young idiot than an old moron with 30 years of experience.
The final straw for me was his reaction to finding out that my mom was ill. I had gotten a phone call while I was out with him and his family, and he was acting up as per usual. And I got a phone call from my aunt telling me that my mom had been rushed to the hospital. I was in Texas. So in order for me to rush home to see my mom, I would have to leave Texas, go home to New York, pick up my passport, and then go to Canada. And when I told him what was going on, obviously I was looking for empathy and sympathy and compassion, and that was not what I got. It was on this day that I finally could see the forest for the trees.
Him cheating on her, kicking her ass, and calling her a weak bitch didn't do it, but lacking empathy for Queen Jezebel, aka her mama, is what did it. Okay. And you might be asking, why am I going in so hard on her mama? Just keep watching the video. You'll find out.
When I was 20 years old, I had this boyfriend. He was from Greensboro, North Carolina. And he had come up to Toronto to play for the Toronto Argos, which is a football team in the Canadian Football League. We genuinely liked each other. We liked each other to the point where we could say really, really offhand things to each other. For example, he asked me what my fantasy was.
Him, her, him, bodies.
And I got this look on my face. And I said, well, a fantasy would be, I guess, a menage with me and you and somebody else. And he was like, another woman? I said, no.
She belongs to the streets.
With another guy. And he was like, really? He was like, do you have an idea as to who this guy is? I said, yeah. He's like, really? You have to tell me. I said, it's your best friend.
She belongs to the streets.
And I expected him to maybe slap me. I don't know what. But he threw his head back and roared with laughter. And I was like, wow, that was not the response I was expecting.
Weird.
Super weird.
And he said, do you want me to make that happen? I was like,
Why are you gay?
it is just a fantasy. It is meant to stay there. But just the fact that you are open to it and don't make me feel shame for feeling this way. He was like, why would I make you feel that way?
Ha! Gay!
And Tony, I don't know. He maybe he was just an anomaly, but wherever we would go, no matter how scantily I was dressed, he would let me move around the party as I felt the need to and interact with anybody. And he would just sit there and just watch me with a smile.
Beta bear.
At one point, somebody stood next to him and asked him, like, yo, aren't you afraid to let her walk around like that? And he was like, absolutely not. She's going home with me. I don't have anything to be worried about.
Bullshit.
And you want to know something? He was absolutely right.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
And you want to know something else? That's exactly what Destiny, Adam 22, and Travis Hunter would say.
Stop him!
Y'all tell me if this sounds familiar. Young 304 gets with young athlete and lives her best life while in that relationship. At least we know where Leanna got it from.
His level of confidence and knowing that I had eyes for nobody but him was what made him so much more sexy to me.
She just lied. She just admitted that her fantasy was to be with him and his best friend. Ain't that eyes for somebody else?
So much more attractive and made me like and love him so much more. I wish that I could say that the vast majority of my relationships went like this, but they didn't. They didn't.
Notice how she didn't mention the part where she left him because she can't respect the man with that many beta male traits. Maybe Travis Hunter and Devin Haney should have some of that wine she's about to sip.
I'm gonna take a sip of wine. I was raised as an only child. My father was a Rolling Stone, and I am the youngest of 11. But I am my mother's only child, And I was raised in a 2-parent household, just me on my own. Some of my earliest memories as a child are of my parents arguing and physically fighting each other. At one point, I was 5 and I got in the middle of my parents physically fighting each other. My mom was holding a glass pitcher above her head and was prepared to smash it on my dad's head. And I want to say that this was in defense of herself. This was her protecting herself.
Right, because her mama was a rebellious white baby boomer dating a low-value black man back when calling the police over a domestic violence dispute would have got a bullet put in his ass. But there's a good reason why her mama found herself in a situation like that in the first place. If you paid attention to what she said, she was her mother's only child, which means that her mama chose a real ninja who has 10 other kids, probably with multiple baby mamas.
So, needless to say, my first introduction to marriage and how men and women, the expectation of how they interact with each other on a romantic level was very, 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 very traumatizing.
Right, because your mama was a rebellious feminist white woman living her best life who couldn't find a proper man, black or white.
Jesus Christ.
And she doomed you to repeat the process, with the only upside being that you didn't have no kids of your own to traumatize your damn self.
Damn.
Y'all remember as kids when we used to say, God kiss it, devil miss it? Well, that's exactly what happened with Melyssa Ford's reproductive window.
Damn.
But this left an imprint on my brain as to the way that men and women interact with each other. And it left me with a very serious internalized distrust of men.
The goal of feminism wasn't equality. That was the goal of the civil rights movement. The goal of feminism was independence from men and fostering a mistrust of men. And women with this Jezebelian mindset will have all aspects of her life affected by it, and that includes the men they choose. So they will avoid proper men, then go give their best to the worst, and then that experience is the story that's told about all men.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Melyssa Ford is more red pill than Andrew Tate, Myron, or all of us, because she just accidentally told you out of her mouth the results of what happens to people when they are raised by a Jezebel. Tell them, Melyssa, it's
very, 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 very traumatizing. And it is definitely intertwined with what I witnessed from a very early age as to my parents and their dysfunction.
It all makes sense now.
I ended up getting an IUD implanted in my uterus. And when I say that sucker was Fort Knox, nothing was getting through that mofo. And it stayed in so long that it ultimately made the decision for me. But yet again, it's not like I felt any source of pressure.
God kiss it, devil miss it.
Which leads me to the last engagement. When I was approximately 36, 37 years old. And I'll be honest, I thought that I was in love with this man, but I wasn't. What I was traumatized from an experience that had happened to me on a cruise ship where I was almost raped.
But wait a minute, 36, 37 should be a wise grown woman, right? Am I supposed to feel bad for a grown woman that's known for being a booty model, living her best life on a cruise ship full of hedonistic real ninjas? And I can already hear it now.
Are you victim blaming?
Yes.
That's like me getting fame and fortune from being a gangster rapper talking about if the dead ops, if your dead homie, and then getting surprised when some hood ninjas in real life want to come and check my temperature. But a self-sold 304 having hot girl summer on a boat full of ninjas now wants the respect of a proper lady. These Jezebels out here living their life want all the good and none of the smoke. I'm not saying it's right, but I wouldn't expect a 36-year-old grown woman to have such a childlike mindset. Actions have consequences, and not every adult is a nice person, but it's funny how my 14-year-old daughter doesn't have a problem understanding that concept. And yes, I can understand that anything can happen to anybody at any time, but it's called risk mitigation, a concept that accountable adults understand. Melyssa is a Jezebel that put all the pieces of the puzzle to make up a situation like that to occur. And it took all the way to her turning 36 for it to finally almost go down. So that alone should say a lot about how safe these Jezebels feel surrounded by men. Because if the man is worse than the burr, then why are women willing to shake ass around men all day, but not one woman is willing to shake ass around the burr?
That's a good question.
I was so traumatized by what had happened to me that when this man appeared, he was offering safety and security. He was physically huge, but he also came with a very secure lifestyle and a lot of security. And so I felt safe. And that's the only thing I was looking for. I was looking for safety. And so I lied to myself. And it was very easy to do that, to just dive in head first, forget the rocks below. And during the process of this relationship, I started to realize that I was losing myself completely and totally. Friends had started to notice, you know, Mel, you're paying a lot of attention to his career, but what are you doing about yours? And I didn't want to hear it. I actually did not want to even hear my own name. I didn't know what it meant to be Melyssa Ford anymore. I had no clue. The sound of my own name gave me goosebumps, and not in the best way.
That's because you was around stability, guidance, and a proper man. And the name Melyssa Ford represents a 304. Fellas, this is why I say you can't save a Jezebel, because a Jezebel will miss that Jezebelian lifestyle.
He ain't lying.
And don't be afraid to let her go, because you can always trust a Jezebel to fail. Just make sure it's not your hand pulling her out of hell.
I was having a massive identity crisis. And so when he proposed, he didn't even get the full words out before I said yes, because I was running from myself. I was running from my truth. I was running from the healing journey that was on the horizon. I was running, and I was trying to put the blinders on. But there was always that like internal sense of that steel core of resilience and tenacity inside of me that said, Melyssa, this is not your truth. This is not your path. This is not it. And as scary as it was to keep trying to align myself with my internal compass, obviously, you know, you make all these decisions, but it's got to bring you back pointing due north, which leads me to where I am now, 48, child-free, and never been married. And honestly, with zero regrets.
For all y'all that don't know, Melyssa's real name is Adeline, cause her ass is out of line. The only thing that man did wrong was give a 37-year-old Jezebelian 304 a second chance at a proper man. And for all y'all that don't believe in heaven and hell, Sierra and Russell Wilson is proof that the devil exists. Melyssa Ford, being a 48-year-old, infertile, single, childless cat lady, is proof that God exists. And with that undeniable proof, I should take my black ass to church this Sunday.
Did you ever decide to freeze your eggs?
Yeah, the freezing eggs conversation came up around mid-30s. amongst myself and my girlfriends. And now what we know about egg freezing is that it's not a guarantee that any one of them is going to be viable, or that even when they're implanted in your uterus, that they're going to, that it's going to take. When I said that God is not a woman, I mean it, because there is no way that a woman would put us through everything that we have to go through just to manifest our so-called fairy tales.
The average quality of life for a woman in the West is much higher than the average quality of life for men around the world. Those same women have the option to use their bodies to make money and gain experiences that it would take a man to become a millionaire to get those same experiences. Melyssa got to live her life on top of the world. She had not one, but two proper men that she tossed away. And due to her choices, she aged out of the game. And her response is God must be a man, implying that if God was a woman, her life would somehow be better. Jezebels like this is the reason that Jesus flipped over those tables, and it's also the reason why Abdul throws the rocks.
Get the rocks.
Yeah.
Abdul?
Yeah, get the rocks.
Get the rocks.
My mother was raised Catholic, and my mother ended up meeting my godmother. And when they met, they're both from the old country, and they'd both been raised Catholic. They both said to each other, let's make a pact. If we ever have female children, we're not going to raise them Catholic.
Of course, of course.
There's something about Catholicism that makes women feel like they're second-class citizens. Like they are there for that marriage is a sacrament, and it's a holy sacrament, and you are there to obey your husband without any consideration as to what you may need, what you may feel, what you may want. And they had seen their mothers and their grandmothers and their aunts live lives that did not belong to them, and they decided that that was not the lives that they were going to give their female children.
And that's why I said that her mama was a feminist Jezebel. The female baby boomer is the generation that started all this shit. Women today do not respect their great-grandmothers. If you ask your girl her opinion of her great-grandmother, watch it be something negative. That's also the reason why Melyssa's snow bunny mama could only qualify for an ain't shit real ninja with 10 kids by numerous women that likes to kick her ass.
We were not raised religious at all. To the point where I literally told my mom, I was like, can I go to Catholic school? She was like, no. I really just wanted to go because I liked the uniforms and I didn't want to look for something to wear every single day. But my mother was steadfast that no. Any curiosity that you have with religion, you can go and seek that out on your own.
And this is the generation that created the worst women in human history. They're all about independence, their version of happiness, and an Aleister Crowley do what thou wilt lifestyle.
One of the main things that I think is missing from a lot of people deciding on getting married is how much of a friendship have you built with this person? Because like outlasts love 1,000% of the time.
And that's a red-pilled statement. I think most men figure out quite quickly that a woman's love is about as real as the Easter bunny. And it's far better that she respects you, and if you don't want her to leave, then she needs to really like you. Because like is an emotion, love is not. Love is a conscious choice to remain duty-bound indefinitely, which is why they have no problem giving it to themselves, children, and pets. They love is like Monopoly money. It's only valuable as long as they agree to keep playing with you.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Men need to learn to find sustenance, entertainment, and sexual gratification outside of women because we don't owe men that.
And this is why we need to save women from themselves. Baby girl, do you know what would happen if men could actually get viable sexual gratification outside of women? Women would lose the only power they have over men, which means life gets ridiculously hard for all women. It would also mean that she would be a broke Canadian chick named Melyssa Ford that couldn't afford a Honda Accord. Shout out to the game. Men already ignoring their girlfriends for video games. Imagine something much better coming along to add on top of those video games. Oh, happy day when a woman has to level up and self-improve to get a man's attention. Oh, happy day, the day that women cannot just come as is. Oh, happy day, the day that there's no more simps, white knights, single mother savers, or groo-boo daters.
Me and my husband were having a conversation the other day, and my husband said if you really want to break down a man, you'll get to his woman. And what Satan is doing is when he cannot get into the mind of a man because the man has a strong foundation, knows his role, and fears the Lord, and can't be easily moved or swayed, he will get to his woman. He will break down his woman's mind, get her in such a negative headspace, get her to see her husband as the enemy, get her to spew out all her negative thoughts onto her husband, to try to break him down chip by chip. And if he can't get to the woman, he'll get to your friends and your family. So it's important to know how the spiritual realm works and be spiritually guarded always. And this is why it is so important to submit to your husband's leadership when he is following the Lord and to cling to him. He is the pole of that family. Just as a city cannot survive if its gate is open and any outsider can come in, same with you and your mind. If it is just open for any outsider to come in, the enemy will come in. You have to be spiritually guarded and spiritually wise.